Welcome to the Avance Podcast. I'm Nick.
I'm Dan.
And we're broadcasting from our bomb shelter.
Yeah.
Wow. There's nothing to show here, Dan.
I see that. Thanks, screen. Anyway, there's our black background.
Yeah.
I'm still building this
Of all
studio.
the malfunctions we could have, that'll work.
Yeah, that'll work.
We
I'm
did
still building
have
the
our
studio.
logo. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. Oh, we've got a good guest this week, and figured I would start this week off with our, of course, Carter Automotive Group tip of the week, which has nothing to do with our guest, but I thought it was a fun fact.
Okay.
All right. So back in '89, Corvette brought ZR1 out.
Okay.
C4 ZR1, right?
You're on a theme lately.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we saw that Corvette downstairs. I was thinking of mine the other day. And that was a pretty weird car in the sense that everybody thinks of Corvettes, they think old push rods and basic configurations. But the 89 had a really weird motor in it, especially for Chevy. Not by anybody else's standards, but by Chevrolet standards because push rods. Well, it had a 32-valve DOHC V8, and it was designed in partnership with Lotus.
Oh.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Really nice engine, actually.
So this is for the just for the ZR1?
Just for the ZR1.
Okay.
The problem is Lotus did a really good job designing it, and Chevy couldn't build anything without push rods, and so they couldn't build it. None of the tooling they had in their manufacturing, it didn't work for it. So they had to contract out to have the motor made.
So Lotus designed it for them but didn't build it?
Didn't build it.
Okay.
And Chevrolet, but it's made in USA here, designed by Lotus, not a bad thing. Thanks, Colin Chapman. But, yeah, so they went to a really unlikely supplier, which is always a fun fact when you talk about Corvettes. People don't usually remember this about this motor. And that weird supplier was Mercury Marine Mercruiser.
So boat engines.
It's a boat engine.
Yeah.
It's not a boat engine, of course. It was designed by Lotus for the Corvette.
But
it's kind of an odd thing people don't think about.
But they had the tooling.
Yeah, they had the tooling to build this engine. So they went over and had Mercruiser build it.
Okay.
And Mercury Marine has nothing to do with Ford Mercury, for the record.
No, yeah.
A lot of people don't know that, but they don't. So,
yeah, I knew that. I actually did know that because growing up, my grandfather had all types of little engines and things like that, and there were a lot more Mercuries.
Yeah,
Mercruiser. Yeah.
Mercruiser, Evinrude.
That too.
Evinrude. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Rescuers. Anyway.
Sure.
Anyway, yeah, so there's a fun little fact tip of the week. Interesting motor, interesting car, great car, really. But, yeah, there's your fun Carter Automotive Group tip of the week, which I just thought people would find interesting. So,
yeah.
But this week we've got Richard Varner with us. Richard, you like motorcycles and other things in the Peterson Museum. Tell us a little bit about yourself and MotoAmerica. One of a very cool thing. You guys kind of had like a, how do I say it? An 9-year overnight success.
That's right. It's going to go in about 9 years here pretty soon, and we're still getting there. But it's my background is grew up in Wichita, Kansas. That's where I live now. I've been around the petroleum industry all my life. Grew up working in the oil fields here, and went to school in Nebraska and Kansas, and then started getting into crude oil trading. And so Houston, Europe, the West Coast, and lived on the West Coast up until about 3 or 4 years ago, and started my own companies and bought and sold a few. And so along the way, I've always told people I'd buy a ticket to anything, to 2 moving parts, just anything mechanical has always been very interesting to me. If it's a refinery, or if it's a pump, or if it's a car or an airplane or a boat. If you like cars, you like airplanes, you like boats, right? It just all kind of flows together, and motorcycles are part of that. And I'm like a lot of guys growing up. My parents wouldn't let me have a motorcycle, so I spent the rest of my life getting even with them. So that's kind of the way it goes. I kind of got into it heavy about 2007. I'd sold the company, and my wife was at the time kind of on my butt about what are you going to do, and so I started buying old basket cases and restoring Triumphs, and that led into designing their own bikes, taking new Triumph motors, making things like in the back here, like street trackers. Even sold one to Jeff Beck along the way, and we started doing some neat stuff. Got involved with Terry Cargus, who's the director of the museum, and we started doing some things for fun with SoCal Speed Shop, and then that grew into a collaboration with Wayne Rainey, who's 3 times world champion, and then that grew into a conversation about, road racing is on the outs in the United States. We ought to restore it. So that led to a conversation with Jim France and he wouldn't sell to us, and it went back and forth, and finally we kind of found an agreement, and we brought in Chuck Axlin, and so we formed a partnership, and now MotoAmerica.
Wow!
In 6 months, in 6 months we stood it up from virtually nothing to wheels on the track, and it's been none of us knew anything about promoting events or putting on those types of things, and but Wayne and Chuck were very conversant with how to run a race, and Chuck had run Kenny Roberts' operation for many years, and he'd run Coda. He was the number 2 guy at Coda for many years when they first started, helped build the track in Austin, and then of course Wayne is world champion. I mean, and so from that point we focused on the racing. It took us a couple of years to get the racing right, and then the business has come along behind it, and it's been a learning process for all of us. But I think now, we've built this thing out, and it's become kind of a force of its own. It's really been fun to see.
You had mentioned briefly back there that racing was kind of dying in America, and I mean, I've seen that too. Like when we're down in Monterey and like Laguna Seca cut back on racing because people kept moving closer and closer to the track, and they didn't want to hear the noise, which doesn't make sense to me. If you're going to build a house next to a racetrack, you're going to hear noise. So, can you talk about that a little bit, about what happened? I mean, as far as where it went. I mean, because a lot of us like enthusiasts really want to see it.
Right. Well, there's a number of things that go with that. I think the roots of those things have to do with the type of racing. So, if you recall, during the early 2000s, NASCAR was still very big. And I think that's because people related to NASCAR better than they related to a lot of things. And that has its foundation in its production-based racing, or at least it was at the time, where you could identify the cars on the track. That was the car you drove. I drive a Pontiac, and the Pontiac just kicks ass this weekend, or a Dodge, or whatever. But you could relate to the car. You could relate to the driver. You could relate to the team. And as everything started moving towards, an effort to reduce cost, started to go into spec racing. So Indy Racing League, kart, you had a Chaparral, and you had a Coyote, and you had, a Penske even at times, but you had all these different types of cars, and people could recognize them. When that kind of went away, I think that started to decline the interest in a lot of ways, because people, they couldn't relate to what was going on. The riders are getting older. The drivers are getting older. Specifically to motorcycles, I think that there was an effort. DMG came, the France family formed a group called Daytona Motorsports Group, and they bought all of the motorcycle racing disciplines from the AMA. And with that, they tried to apply NASCAR approaches to racing, which I think is perfectly appropriate. I mean, you can't argue with them. They were very successful. But the model was kind of off because it required the tracks to promote the series. And I think that's also what happened with IndyCar and a few others. The tracks were promoting the series. There's no consistency in the product. There's no consistency in the competition. So it just kind of got to be mundane, I guess is the best way to put it. And I think a lot of contributing factors, the 2008 recession, all those things kind of just, and then don't forget, in the meantime, we have a complete transition of marketing. I mean, you've gone from billboards and TV, linear TV, to, cutting the cord, to digital, to social media. How do you promote those things? We don't promote anything now like we did even 5 years ago, or even 3 years ago, much less 15 years ago. So there's a lot of contributing factors to that. Who would have thought that the thing that would have brought Formula One back to the interest in the United States was that one show, Drive to Survive. Yeah. But what it did was it formed an association with the drivers, and it formed an association with the human element that they didn't have before. And I think that kind of is the nexus of why we lost those connections, and I think that's the nexus for it declining.
I mean, you grew up obviously on a motorcycle since you were a little kid. I grew up like him, where my mom said you can't have any motorcycles. Now she doesn't know how many I have, which is safer for me. But you grew up with that. Like, did you watch the racing when you were a kid?
I had Kenny Roberts' helmet when I was younger. Like, it is matching a ride. Like, that was a thing for me. And Wayne Rainey, his crash was pretty. Even I was was a long time ago, but I remember that very clearly. It was hard. Yeah, actually, let's transition with that. For a lot of people don't know who Wayne Rainey is outside of our show. There's going to be our motorcycle group, but a lot of people don't know, like, he's an incredible rider, and now he's a manager. And after his crash, he was paralyzed. What's it like working with Wayne now? In that, I mean, he seems to be doing very well.
You know, Wayne's a special guy. 1993, he was paralyzed in an accident. He was in the race for his 4th consecutive world championship. At that time, they were racing 500cc two-stroke motorcycles, and they had a power band that was about that wide, and you barely cracked it, and you were either on or off. And these guys were running. They were wicked. I mean, they were absolutely wicked. You know, you listen to Rossi talk about him, and he's ridden them a couple of times. You know, and Valentino's like, I can't believe he even rode these things. But he was riding them. Kenny Schwantz was riding them. Kevin Schwantz was riding them. And they're highly competitive, but we were dominating at that point in time. He was killed. He was not killed. He was hurt horribly in an accident. He immediately, this is Wayne, he immediately got back into racing within a few months and started running a 250cc team in the World Championship. Kind of under Kenny Roberts, but he did that for several years. I mean, he didn't miss a beat. But things started kind of catching up to him, and it had a toll on him. So he laid out for 20 years, and we were introduced to him by Gordon McCall that runs the quail shows.
Yeah.
And we were building these Triumphs that were pretty cool. They were street trackers, and we thought, God, what else can we do? And so we looked at Yamahas, and so we built a R1 replica of a TC750. Well, that got Wayne going. And that got Wayne going. It was featured in Cycle World, and it's kind of the bike that got us all going again. Wayne had laid off of anything to do with racing really directly for a while, and this brought him back in. Well, since then we've become partners and dear friends. We have differences of opinion fairly often because I approach things from a different place than Wayne does. And what I've learned about Wayne is that he is so passionate. And he is such a perfectionist, and all the attributes that made him a world champion, he brings to the table in the series. If it's to do with safety, if it's to do with competition, marketing, or anything else, he's got such a sense of perfection that it's amazing. And if you think about racers in general, they're chasing the last thousandths of a second all the time. That's what you have to do to win. And that's what Wayne brings to our table. And it's invaluable, really, because where I might be saying, hey, 90% is good enough, he's going, no, we've got to be on it. We have to be there. And I value that with Wayne. And, my worst day, getting up is where his best day begins. I mean, my worst day is where he starts every day. I have nothing but admiration for Wayne and nothing but love for the guy. He's such an incredible person. Yeah, the only one that I like more than Wayne is his wife Shay. So she's unbelievable. But leave it at that. But the two of them together are a formidable team, and like I said, we have a lot of love for both of them.
Awesome.
You've been talking about building.
By the way, I give a shit for my other two partners, so that's okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You were talking about building bikes. Were you building these bikes just for yourself, kind of, or were you actually producing these for certain people? Obviously, you have a love, and you were driven to motorcycles by your mother's hatred of motorcycles. So, yeah.
Well, I've always had, like I think I told you earlier, a passion for flat track motorcycles, and this is their style. They're just bare essence motorcycles. The original ones didn't even have brakes on them, so very minimalist types of motorcycles, kind of a Cobra mentality, lightweight, high output, simple machines. And what I did was I went back to 1970, which is where my mind stuck anyway, because that's where I was in high school, and I haven't grown up much in terms of maturity since then. But the idea
we support that. Yeah.
And so I started, you restore one bike and you go, okay, that's pretty cool. Now what, right? So I thought 1970 is a cool year. And so I researched, and Triumph made 8 models of motorcycles, 1970. So I collected, it's like you get out of the cereal box. I collected them all from 1970. And there were 2 that were pretty rare. One was I digress a little bit, but one was a Bonneville that was homologated into flat track racing. The AMA had always required that only 500cc motorcycles with overhead valves could compete with the 750, basically side valve Harleys at the time. 1970, they relented, and they said, okay, you could run a 750 overhead with a 750 side valve. Okay. Problem was, Triumph didn't make one. They didn't make a twin. So what they did was they said, okay, Duarte Motors and Johnson Motors on the West Coast with the 2 distributors, they went to Sonny Rout, who was a drag racer that made a kit with bigger barrels and pistons, and it would take it to 750, and they contracted with him. They made 206 of them to homologate them. They took the sides off the crates, pulled the cylinders off, the heads off, put them on, and stamped a T on the T120R number. So there's a T120RT, which is a homologation model of the thing. It's pretty cool. It's only 750 the Bonneville they made. And so, found that one. I found a Triumph, this 1970 triple that they only made 286 of because they couldn't sell the ones from 1969. So, there's all kinds of stuff we can go into about that. But then what? Okay, got all 8 of those. Now what? And I thought, well, I've always liked the flat tracks. I'll go find a Trackmaster frame. And I started thinking, shit, you're old. Kick this thing over, and so I thought, well, the new Triumph Bonnevilles look the engines look a lot like the old ones. So I started messing around with Richard Pollock down in San Diego, Mule Motorcycles. I was introduced to them by Dave Edwards, who was the editor at Cycle World at the time. We started talking, and he was making street trackers out of Harleys and old Yamaha 750s, right? And we figured out a frame, and he assembled it. And the thesis was a 300-pound motorcycle, 80, 90 horsepower, and we hit the numbers, and the thing was a hoot. So I thought, well, okay, let's build. So we built several variations, and the idea is, we're so smart, we'll sell them. And we sold one, and we sold it to Jeff Beck, and that's another story. So by this time, Terry Cargan had gone to the museum and was running that, and Terry hooked me into going on the board, and I was up there one day, and I said, let's go to lunch. He goes, well, you might want to go to lunch with me. I said, why? He said, well, Jeff Beck's coming in, because Jeff had a bunch of cars there that we're keeping, some hot rods. I don't know if you guys know much about Jeff Beck, but he's a real hot rod guy, and he makes his own hot rod. Does his own welding. The guy, he's very conversant with it. We had several of his cars that we were keeping there, and I met him, and Terry says, well, he's the motorcycle guy, and he says, you know what? There's only one motorcycle I like that's called a Street Master. I said, well, that's my motorcycle. I've been on the internet, He goes, no, you can buy them. I said, yeah, I know, I'll sell you one. I built them. That's mine. No, come on. So we built one and shipped it over to him. And there's a documentary on Jeff Beck you can watch on Netflix. I'm sitting there watching this one night, and he's sitting in his garage, and I'm talking to him, and shit, right behind him, the motorcycle. So I'm in there taking pictures. Like, look at this, But it was pretty fun. So that's how we got started. It's a long story. We built a few of them, and we built them basically for my own ego, I guess you want. And, they're pretty cool. They got in a bunch of books, and they've been on different shows. One went to the Moon Eye show in Japan, and I got to know Pete Shapiris at SoCal Speed Shop from that, and Jimmy Shine. And, the whole biking thing has kind of opened up a world for me that I never would have thought of before. When you grow up in Wichita, Kansas in the late 60s and 70s, the whole world's outside of here. It's like looking through a knothole, in a fence. The whole world's on the other side. And you move to California and you meet people, and it's just a dream come true. I met Bruce Brown and Aldana and Gino Romero and all these guys I read about growing up. It's Dan Gurney, and it's been an amazing experience for me. Yeah.
It's a small world down there. I'm always surprised who we run into every time we're down there, just hanging out.
On Monterey?
Yeah.
Can you talk about your involvement?
Yeah, I've heard you guys talk about Bruce Meyer before. Bruce, if Bruce was in Ireland, he'd be the guy with the flute and the snakes behind him, on St. Patrick's Day. He gets more He gets more people involved and gets more people enthusiastic about that. And if you just hang around with Bruce long enough, you're going to see everything you need to know. So if you just camp out in his backyard, you'd be amazed what happens. So, yeah.
Sure. Talk about your involvement with Peterson. I mean, that's obviously, like you said, you were on the board, which led to some motorcycle sales, which is good. But how did you originally get involved with them?
Well, basically, Terry Cargus. Terry and I got to be very good friends, and he got on the board, was as executive director. And so he put me up for it, basically, and which was an honor. And I met with Bruce. I met Bruce for the first time, and David Sidoric, Bill Amundsen, and Peter Mullen. And at that time, I'm trying to think. I think maybe there's only one other board member at the time. Maybe it's a very small operation. So I went there, and Peter said, "Okay, but you have to work." Jokingly, so he asked me to be treasurer, and then Peter said, "Oh, by the way, we're going to build this new museum," and so that's what happened. And Peter said, "We're going to do it." We did it, and it's been, you talk about a joy and a privilege. It's that place under Terry's leadership, and I think the guidance of Bruce brings a lot of energy to the place. David Sidoric brings a lot of vision. And I think that Peter Mullen brought a lot of audacity to make things happen. Peter stepped down 2 years ago, and I went to the bathroom, and they made me chairman. So that's been poor Judge whenever.
You guys still have the F1 exhibit and the Bond exhibit there? I mean, the Peterson exhibits are out of this world. I look at them online all the time.
And that's what Terry has really uncovered is that all too often museums are where history goes to die. You have an exhibit there, and it doesn't change; it stays the same. Well, Terry's been dedicated to the idea that we have to change exhibits on a regular basis. He's developed a very great curation staff there that puts on great exhibits, and as the brand has grown, we're able to attract people that are willing to loan their collections. So. The Bond group, they own almost all of those vehicles. A good friend of mine was Steve Hiller, whose dad started Hiller Helicopter, but I walk in there and there's a Hiller Helicopter in the porte cochere right there. We have Cessna 182 hanging from the ceiling in there. We've got video exhibits with every vehicle that was involved in the Bond, and to the point where the Bond people were coming in that are part of the foundation said, "This is the best exhibit we've had." But I think, that thing was well over $500,000 to curate and put together. But it draws people in. We get the museum admissions that we were looking for. The Formula One exhibit's owned by Juan Gonzalez. That's a guy you should have on the podcast. Juan is one of the great guys. He's huge in racing. He races cars himself. I think he did pretty well. He was at RoadAmerica last weekend. He's raced at Sebring, but he sponsors parts of Formula One, Arrows IndyCar, NHRA, MotoAmerica, American Flat Track. The guy is such a racing fanatic, and he's got this great collection that he's been very generous to share. And it's fantastic. You go there, and you can see the evolution of Formula One in front of your eyes. The wing, the aerodynamics especially, and some of the propulsion and suspension changes, ride heights, everything that they did in Formula One. You can see what's his name, Adrian Newey, his impact. It's an amazing exhibit. Lots of video behind it, and but Juan is an interesting guy. He owns Mission Foods, which is a worldwide operation that is the largest producer of flatbreads and tortillas, along with other things. Milk, milling operations, flour. He's talking to him a few weeks ago. He's got mills in the Ukraine he had to shut down. He's got business in Russia that's still open. How do you manage all that? He's an outstanding businessman. We recently asked him on our board, but he's a very interesting person, and he's very generous to racers and racing. And I'm very fortunate he's a friend. I mean, he's a great guy.
I'd love to have him on. Yeah.
I mean, I think when most of us car guys think about the Peterson, you think about the vault. You think about what's hidden away downstairs. But there's some videos that have gotten out. I mean, you talk about absolute history. Some of the cars that are stored there and kept and in the care. And I mean, I'm assuming you've had a chance to wander around down there and just take it all in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, every time I'm there, I just go through and see what's new. I mean, the first time I went through the vault, it wasn't open to the public, and it was kind of a dingy place. And they had covers on all the cars. And I'm walking through, and I'm with Terry, and I go, "What's this?" I pull up the cover, and hell, it's a Tucker. I said, "That's a Tucker." Cool. He says, "No, it's not a Tucker." He says, "It's the first Tucker." Oh, okay. Well,
okay.
We walk to the next thing, pick it up. It's like, well, that's a 600 SEL limousine, right? He goes, "That was Saddam Hussein's limousine."
Oh, Saddam Hussein's limousine.
Yeah. And you walk the place, and it's just like that. This was the car in Greece, or this was Bobby Rahal's winning car, or this was all these different things. It's amazing what's down there, and what we've determined is we can put the show on upstairs, and that's a great thing to do, and people like to see it, and they like to see curated exhibits. That's a wonderful thing, but if you can expose them to the vault, it really brings back memories for a lot of people. That was the car I was in. You go back to the thing with racing. That's the car I was in. My family had one of those. That my buddy had one of those. My buddy had a hot rod just like that, and you see generations going through there. It's a lot of fun. It's a great place, and it's been a real draw for us at the museum too.
Now you've done some racing in cars too. You're not just a bike guy. You've got some BMWs, right? And you've done some racing in those.
I've done some. I started. I used to play football in college, and I'm kind of a big guy, and so what I've been trying to do as I get older is find a car that's light enough with enough power that I can still stay competitive with, right? So I started off in MGs and a old 60. Well, you said you had a Triumph 4-cylinder. I had in high school. I had an MGB GT, and drove it for a while, and then I started racing an MG Roadster, and wasn't doing it, still not doing that well in racing, but I enjoy the hell out of it. And then I found an MGB GT V8, which they built for the early 70s. They had a Rover V8. It was the last iteration of a GT, and that thing, golly, it makes about 300 horsepower, and it's about 1,900 pounds. So, but it's a handful.
There you go.
Wow.
And with me in it, we had to cut a hole in the floorboard and lower the seat and put a. They had talked about the gurney bubble on the GT.
yeah, on the GT, yeah.
I got a Varner butt.
That's cool.
So you drop it down. But that car's a lot of fun. And then I started looking for something more fun, and I'd grown up. One of my favorite cars growing up was a 3-liter, the CS series, the first E9 coupe that BMW made. They had one down the street, and I'd drive by there all the time at the dealership, and golly, it was good looking. And when I lived in London for a while, I had one that was bright green, automatic, and liked it. Had velour seats. I mean, in Europe for a while they had cut velour seats on cars. Yeah, and Lord help you if you ever try to sit in one with a pair of corduroys on, because your back pocket's around the front, but it just hold on. You know? But that was Europe.
That's funny.
Came back, had a bunch of different BMWs and different things, and so I found an E9 and a friend in Costa Mesa at my office and shop I have there. So we restored it and put a S52 motor in it and a 5-speed behind it. And I made a hot rod out of it for the street, and that's what I drive when I'm in California most every day. I thought, God, this is fun. So I started looking around for CSL to race. And Adam Carolla's came up for sale. So it was on Bring a Trailer. So I'm bidding on it, you know, and Adam he bought it from Cubby. Oh, hell, trying to think of the guy's name. His dad was Cubby Crab or something. His dad was Buster Crab, who was the first Tarzan in the movies. And this guy had been an child actor or something. And the car had been built in Europe and had a provenance from Germany and brought over here. They'd put 3 big Webers on it, and we got it. Adam had never raced it, and I think we had to do a lot of work on it, but it was fine. I mean, we had to mess with the differential and some framing and different things. So we're just now getting the car settled. But I raced with a group called Vintage Auto Racing Association, VARA, which has been around the West Coast for a long time. We usually run at Willow Springs or at Buttonwillow or at Pahrump at Spring Mountain over there. And we'll race with SVRA sometimes. And I enjoy it. I'm not very good at it. You know, I've got something in the back of my head that you get out and turn 9 at Willow Springs, and you're going, 120. You're thinking, it's 50 years old, Richard. It's 50 years old. This car's 50 years old. Yeah.
You got to remind yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I shouldn't do, but you know what? It's fun. It's fun to get out there with other guys. You go to the meetings and you're thinking everyone's going to be a lot younger, but hell, the drivers meeting, it's 50, 60, 70-year-old guys out there racing. And the big problem we have is getting younger people in. So we started letting, the 320 coupes in and some other, we're creating classes for sort of 80 and 90 vintage cars now, just to get the younger guys in and get them, because that's a vintage car to them. For us, hell, even the guy driving the pace car was on oxygen. He had, you go there, he had the canyon up his nose, and
that's funny.
It's gentleman racing, but it's a lot of fun, and there's nothing wrong with the weekend at the track. And I've gotten my son involved. He runs a 2002 BMW Coupe. It's a 73, and so that's been fun. And we bring my grandson out, and he'll be good. It's a good time for him too. So it's racing's a good thing. It's a good thing if you have a family member, a daughter or son that wants to do it. It's a good way to get together and mess around.
Now, you said, like, growing up in Kansas and working in the industry you do, you seem like you're not afraid to get dirty. Are you wrenching on your cars and doing fabrications and things like that? Are you doing the work?
I do what I can, but the guys that work in my shop, I start to work on something and they almost start crying. It's all that one said looked like a bear cub with boxing gloves on. Yeah, I'm not probably as adept as I should be. But yeah, I love doing it, but I'm not very good at it. I know what every tool is for. I've got more tools than NASA. Okay, I love tools, and I've got a tool for everything, and I know how to use them, but I'm not very good at using them. But I tell you what, it sure is hell a lot of fun to get out there and mess around with it. And then, of course, what I'm really good at is, and I've got a lot of good ideas. They don't always seem to get out of the car, but I've got a lot of really good ideas. So.
As long as you're having fun. I mean, that's the main thing. Yeah. Hey, speaking of racing, you guys are coming up here June 24th. MotoAmerica is at the Ridge. That is one of the tracks on the series. I want to ask you about the different classes.
First of all, Are you going to come out? Are you going to come out to it?
I won't be in town. We've been talking to Daniel Pilling though, and things are still moving around. So
is it 24th of June?
Yeah.
We'll be on the Monkey Run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yes, we'll be in the middle. We'll be in the middle of Idaho on Honda Monkeys. That's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a good time. But the different classes you guys have, because you guys have.
You had to explain that to me, but that's okay. All right. No. Sorry.
I'll send you the video.
There's a video.
You'll laugh.
Yeah.
It's as ridiculous as it sounds. Trust us.
I defined it, just not to go offside, but we did a podcast about it when we came back, and I described it as Oompa Loompas riding motorcycles through the forest. So that was basically
yeah. Sort of a circus act, right?
Yeah. Minus the da 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 da.
Yeah. It's really fun though.
Yeah, we're going up to the Ridge. This will be our third event at the Ridge. The first year was COVID, and we were able to put it on without attendees. And so, we got to know the track a little bit. We had to change the configuration of the front straight because we were concerned that with the speeds on the front straight, you would have a difficult time in the first corner. So we did that to adjust speeds a little bit. It's a unique track. Its setting is, as you know, is out in the Olympic Peninsula. It's there are great operators out there. They're good people. The track is great. It's got a unique corner on the back end of it. The last corner coming out, a lot of elevation change, sort of their corkscrew. And last year we had a pretty good crowd, but that was during that heat wave that I couldn't believe you guys had. I mean, it was 110 degrees out there, and it was
that was miserable.
There wasn't anything moving out there that time last year. I was in Seattle. My daughter lives in Ballard, and so I was up there the day or two after, and I mean, nothing was walking around that town with that heat. So that wasn't a very good test. But this year, pre-sales are good. We'll be there the 24th, and it should be a good thing. We'll race. We're going to race to see the. We'll have Junior Cup, which is 14 to 28-year-olds on single-cylinder 400cc motorcycles. Usually it's a Kawasaki. We'll have the Twins Cup, which is about a 750cc motorcycle, two-cylinder bike. It'll have 30 or 40 maybe participants in it. And that's kind of a tuner class, intermediate class. We really like that. We have a super sport class that'll race there, which is changed this year. It's we have everything from 700cc four-cylinder bikes up to 900cc four cylinders, but we've leveled them, and it's been a very exciting. We ran them at Daytona this year, and it was a wonderful race. Very close racing on those bikes. Super bikes, of course, 1000cc, highly modified production bikes, stock 1000s, and then we'll have the Mini Cup, and the Mini Cup is off the chart. It's anywhere from 125 to 190cc Ovale motorcycle. It's built in Italy. It's a full-on proper racing motorcycle, and we have kids 8 to 13 on these things. And they'll, we run them on the kart track there, but they'll hit speeds of 70 miles an hour. These kids are dragging knees, dragging elbows, and they're going after it. And so we run a championship. We have, I think, 5 or 6 rounds of that this year. I'm not sure if we have the build, train, race going on there. We have a setup with Royal Enfield. If you guys like bikes, I don't know. Have you guys seen these Royal Enfield bikes? Have you looked at them?
Yep. Yeah, I have.
Yeah, I know them.
They've really come on. I mean, the quality they're like the AK-47s of motorcycles. I mean, you can drop them in the mud; they'll run anywhere. They're Indian built, but they're great bikes. Good styling. They've put together a program for women, and they give them the bikes. There's 15 of them. They vet them for their racing backgrounds or lack of. They give them the bikes. They convert them into race bikes. Then they train on them, and then they go out and race on them. And They're not the fastest things in the world, but I tell you what, they're a lot of fun to watch. The ladies are doing a great job in it, and it's been a lot of fun to support that. So
Dan's just pulling up photos. Those are awesome looking.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, you said you modified the front straight. What did you do to it to slow people down? Are you putting a chicane in it? Is there?
Yeah, we put a chicane in it. We've done that.
Okay.
We've done that there. We did it at Pittsburgh pit race in Pittsburgh, and it's just a way to slow things down a bit so that we don't. Most of the tracks in the United States are built for cars, and the differentiation between a bike track and a car track is runoff, basically. So if you go to Barber in Alabama, that's a motorcycle track. And there's plenty of runoff, and it's designed for the physics of a motorcycle. If you go to other places, you don't have that. So you have to slow them down before they get to critical areas. And pit race and Daytona is another one, and the Ridge.
Interesting. I did not. I mean, I knew that certain tracks were built for things. Obviously.
Yeah, I didn't think about it either. Yeah, good point.
Okay.
There's some drama at COTA last time I heard about. Actually, after the race, you want to tell us about that?
Was it everybody trying to leave? Because I had that drama leaving the F1 track. You couldn't leave.
No, it's a safety thing issue.
Oh.
Yeah, we did. We did have a little drama. Yeah. Okay, here's the issue. I think. I don't know if just to get people kind of informed. This year we have a really fantastic racer, a rider that's come over here from Europe. His name is Danilo Petrucci. He's raced in MotoGP for a number of years. He raced at Dakar last year for the first time and actually won a stage, which is remarkable that anyone could their first time out. He got injured there, but he came over to race with Ducati, and that coincides with Ducati's investment in our series. Ducati sort of watched this for a while. Kyle Wyman had a team, and then HBSK started a team, and they had some backing, and they brought Larice Baz in, and Larice was here for a while, and then they brought Danilo in. And Danilo's, it's kind of like IndyCar when Nigel Mansell came over, some of the other ones. They may not be in their prime, but they're still within the top 3 or 4% in the world. Danilo comes over, and there's kind of two aspects of this. One is that I think he was a little surprised about how we race in the United States. I mean, that's everything from procedures to the tracks to the competition. And the competition's fierce. It's very fierce. Well, the first two races, first two events, the top Yamaha team had some mechanical problems or some DNS, and Danilo won the races. He did well. We had an issue. He had a DNF at Road Atlanta, and then I think he got maybe won the other race. Well, Jake Gagne then has been getting his bike up to speed. He won the first race at VIR this last weekend, and he won the second race. In the first race, Danilo finished fourth behind Matthew Skoltz and I think Cam Peterson. I think that's right. Yeah, I think Cam was third. So, that's pretty rough. I mean, all of a sudden you change. Now, new track for Danilo, got that. Different conditions. Second race, he was vying for second, and at the line, he was probably half a bike length back from second place. Across the line, Matthew Skoltz was ahead of him, and next thing we know, Danilo's off the track, and VIR has got an unusual configuration where it has a kink right about where the finish line is. It's a long straight. He went down. He race control noticed that he got up fairly quickly, and that he walked to the side of the track. Others were finishing the race. He walked across the track. We had a person meet him there with a side by side effectively, and they brought him to the infirmary, which was, maybe 300 yards away. Now, the actual timeline we've been able to figure out was about 50 seconds till he got to the side of the track from the time he crossed the line. It's been about 3 minutes till he got to the infirmary. Now, the issues at hand are that down low, when you cross the finish line there, you are booking it. You're doing 160, 170 miles an hour. So he is hauling. He is hauling the mail. And because the track fades off, it gets cut. The side of the track comes up on you very quickly, and he went down. We didn't have any cameras on that particular sequence. It was one of those things where we have cameras out there, but they're following other people and different things. So we don't have cameras or exactly what happened. But we do have camera angles around that, and we can kind of piece the timing together. Well, as anybody would expect, you get out there and you get chucked off a motorcycle going 150 or 60. It's not pretty under any circumstance. And he got up fairly quickly, but to his perception, okay, which we're not trying to take anything away from, he felt like he had been laying there for quite some time, and there was no one there to attend to him. So, to someone that's Italian and whatever, he felt it. He felt it himself that he had to put out on social media. He sat there for 2 minutes. No one took care of him, and a lot of other things. Well, of course, when that happens, you get the people on Danello's side, you get the people on our side, you get the people that don't know anything about racing weighing in. So we put out a response that basically said, here's where we see the facts. Now, looking back, I would say that, did we do anything wrong? No. We got there as soon as we could. We noticed that he gets up. They're trained. The riders are trained if they need help to signal, put their hand up, but don't get up. Well, he got up really pretty quickly, so we didn't. That changes everything, because you don't interrupt what's going on at the track. You don't deploy an ambulance on a hot track. You don't run people across the track when the people are finishing, especially on a straightaway. You adjust your response when that person gets up. If they can get up, they may be hurt, they may be dazed, but they're not necessarily dying at that point, right? So you adjust things. Well, what we could have done, we could have probably had somebody there quicker. We were there pretty quick, but we could always do better. We can always do better. Did we do anything wrong? No, but we didn't do enough right, if you will. Okay, we didn't. If you know what I mean. We've not had any problems in this respect, but we can always do a lot better, and that's what we're hoping to do. And we have some takeaway from this about, okay, how do we? This one turn is very unique in our series. How do we maybe adjust later on going to that place? There's some talk about that we've had problems on that straight before. We've had two people go off before. One was at the bottom of the straight in the wet. He comes onto the straightaway, loses the back end and goes off. Okay, that was at the bottom of the straight. Bobby Fong hydroplaned on the straight, had nothing to do with the turn or any of the configurations, and he went off there. So we haven't really had any bad experiences there. Turn one has been different, but we have people there and ready to go. So there's a lot of kind of contributing factors to this. Can we do better? Absolutely, and we will. But this is about continuous improvement. It's not necessarily about a grave error, if you will. And we take what happened to Danilo very seriously. We don't take any issue with what his perceptions were, because you don't know. You're down and you've just been through a 170 mile an hour knothole. It's hard to say. Your time has changed. Think about falling. You've been in a car wreck before. It seems like time slows down. There's all kinds of things that happen that way. So we're not taking anything away from Danilo. But we took our time. We investigated the accident. It took us 2 days to come out with the right timeline. We can back it all up. But we know we can do better. So that's kind of the way it works. But it's made for a lot of discussion, I can tell you that. we've got people in
Well,
Europe.
like you said, in any time you fall down, you crash, even as a kid or as an adult, time seems so slow. You just never know. So,
Absolutely.
I think you look back on the timelines. I think everybody did the right thing. So
Thank you for such a thorough response. I was just I didn't expect that. That's really interesting.
Way to cause drama, Dan.
I know, man. My bad.
Well, if you want to know what time it is, I've got a watch. I'll tell you how it's made. So that's the way it goes.
That's exactly how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about the Suzuki leaving MotoGP? And they're coming our way, I think, right? Is that the rumor?
Well, they've decided not to support MotoGP. They've announced they'll continue to support our racing in the United States and other series. It's hard to say what impact they'll have long term. We're disappointed to see it. I know MotoGP is disappointed to see it, but I think it gets back to Suzuki's different than the other Japanese manufacturers. They're not Kawasaki, which has a big, heavy industries presence. They're not Yamaha, that has a big, diverse presence in musical instruments and boating and other things. They're not Honda, that has airplanes and everything. Suzuki's is a smaller, different operation. Doesn't mean they're in bad shape or anything, but they have to deploy their resources like they need to. We've seen all the Japanese kind of go away from the model of having strictly a factory team to having a factory favored team that they support. So Attack Performance for Yamaha in our series, John Urich's M4 Suzuki series group. So they pick a favored person, but they are not a pure factory team. And they do the same thing in World Superbike and some of the others. So I think it's a little bit of a trend, but I think too, I think they had to focus resources, and it doesn't impact us directly yet, and that's good. We're still a big market here, so I think we'll get some support going forward. I don't see that changing over time, but it's just a disappointment.
Yeah. Disappointing to see him leave MotoGP. I'm just still really glad they're in the U.S. series. It's interesting because car people who aren't bike people at all, and we run into them all the time, they're like, Suzuki, what are you talking about? Like, maybe all they can think of is the little compact cars. I'm like, Suzuki makes awesome motorcycles.
What was Suzuki, Jimmy? Or what? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Hayabusa has its own cult following, and the
right, yeah.
The Hayabusa motor was the foundation motor for the Radical, right? The Radical cars, race cars.
Yeah,
I mean that thing's a monster, and the textures are very nice.
There's a famous story where I don't think my mom listens to the podcast, so I'll get away with it. But I bought a Hayabusa in Spokane many, many years ago, and the guy had bought it and was deathly scared of it. And I showed up and paid my cash and laughed at him and said, yeah, sure, and ended up getting on the, if you know, Spokane going down to the Palouse. I got on the Palouse Highway and nailed it, and I was still 230 pounds, and that thing came up, and I jumped on the tank to get it to come down, and I turned around, and I drove home, and I sold the bike. Like, I think I maybe put 7 miles on it. So yeah, it's stupid fast, and it's a stupid fun bike, but I did not have the skill, and it was one of these things where I was like, yeah, I can totally, a Hayabusa, I'm a big guy, that bike's not going to get out. So I'm lucky to have on my skin, but yeah.
How difficult could this be, right? Oh,
yeah. I literally laughed at the guy. I called him back and apologized. I was like, I'm selling the bike. Little lesson from above.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I had a Gixxer 1000. It was a great bike.
You like Suzuki. You've always liked Suzukis.
I haven't had a lot of them. I had a lot of Hondas. I've had a lot of everything, honestly. But the Gixxer was a great bike.
I didn't even know I was a Honda guy until I looked at my garage one day and I had 2 Hondas. I was like, oh, I guess I'm a Honda guy. So.
What's your favorite bike, guys? What do you like?
Ooh, that I've owned or just in general?
No, just that you
That's
owned
tough.
that you really enjoyed.
Ooh, that's a tough question. Probably I had a RC51 and SP2, so 2002 RC51, and I had I partnered with a Krapovich. I was working at a bike shop at the time, and I got one of the Superbike exhausts, like all titanium all the way back, and now that exhaust, if I had it, is worth more than the bike. But, I was young and stupid and broke, and so I didn't have it very long. But I didn't crash it. I actually rode it a lot. It was a fantastic bike. And it was terribly uncomfortable, and it didn't get very good mileage, and it was heavy. But the sound and the way I felt riding it, you just can't really compare to any other bike I've had. And I've had Ducatis and other bikes too. And similar, I love twins because I love the sound and I love the feeling of a twin and the torque, that low end just roll through torque. But that RC, man, it could just drop into a corner and all that weight went away as soon as you threw it over. And even with my really light bikes, my CBR 600 and my 1000 and my Gixxer and things like that, I still felt I wasn't. By the numbers, but I felt faster on the RC51. And every time I got it, it was exciting to ride. And I still miss that bike. It's one of the few bikes I would buy again if I found a really pristine example, because I loved having it. I loved the sound, and it was a weird bike at the time. So, yeah.
I mean, I have had a lot of like smaller bikes. Like I said, I minus the Hayabusa for a day and a half. Right now, the Monkey will always be my favorite. But right now I've got a CRF 450 RL, and I'm kind of, because I want to get off the road and more on dirt, and this one kind of gets me there because I don't have a trailer and I need a bike that gets me there. But right now my eyes are set on, and I'm trying to think of it. I was trying to look it up. It's the Triumph. It's basically the off-road scrambler.
That's cool, yeah.
The 1200. I mean, I would love. That's my dream right now. I haven't yet to ride one. I'm going to go down and ride one, but yeah.
I will say for sure though, and Nick and I talked about this, we have never had so much fun on a motorcycle as we've had on our Monkeys, which sounds stupid because I've ridden so many bikes, but it's the experience. I laugh the entire time because I'm way too big for it. It has no power, and you just throw it around. Like we were off-roading these things, we went off-road tires and suspension, like there's a big rock in the trailer, just pick it up, move around it. And we just laughed for 3 days straight, covered in dust and mud and these stupid little bikes that cost us almost nothing, and it was fantastic. I love them. Well, not anymore. Now they cost us a lot.
Now they cost us a lot, but the Monkeys are smiles per miles. But like I said, I think Dan and I both looked at each other and we said, I don't know if I would own a true sports bike again. I don't know, as much as I'm 42 years old and my hand just wants to do this so much that I think I'm out of it. So I think I want something a little bit more. And less likely be hit by a car off-road, too.
For me, that's just where we live. I don't like riding around here because of the traffic and the people around here. And we're in a tech city, and everybody's doing this more than other cities, trust me. Like, this is part of the driving experience. So your phone's right in front of you, and somebody's doing this. That's just how everybody drives. And I stopped riding on the street because so many people merged into me all the time. And I didn't have any really bad accidents. I got bumped off the road here and there a few times and was able to recover. But, man, it's worse. And so I love getting away from the city and riding, and that's why I would love another sport bike. But I would be like, I'm going to trailer it to over the mountains and then go and ride.
I think something I've been noticing, and generally, and this is sports bikes, this is dual sports. Everybody's getting their phones and their big screens, and they're putting them up there. And the bikes are I'm watching people on bikes start to drift out of lanes and stuff. And I'm a person. I've got my headset in my helmet. I put my phone in my pocket just because. If my phone is up on the bars, I literally took that mount off my bike because I kept looking down at my phone and it was becoming unsafe. And so I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
And it took away from the fun. Like you said, I want to get out there. I want to have fun. I want to do it safely. And I'm noticing the older I get, the more I go out padded up like the Michelin Man, but I'm safe. So.
What about you? What's your favorite bike you've had or ridden or anything?
Well, my first bike was a mini bike. It was a little Taco, mini bike. And it was built by Steen, and no shocks on it. It had a 2.5 power Briggs & Stratton motor on it. And, we used to ride those things in packs around town, around our neighborhood. We had empty lots, and you go right, and the police would come about, you get about a good hour, and the police would show up, and then you get you to leave. And so, it's that's where I grew up. That was the first thing. And I think you'll find that most people you talk to, you say, how'd you get started? On a mini bike, so that's one thing. I think for just fun bikes, well, one, I kind of divide it in two groups. I have a 66 Bella set Thruxton, all right, and you get on this thing, it's got, the Kickstarter is about 6 inches long, okay, it's a joke, and it's there to move a 500cc single piston up and down, and you're either going to break your leg with it or it's just a joke. Yeah, I ask somebody how to start one of these every time. He said, "Live on a hill." Okay, that's his answer. Yeah, but he's got this big piston going up and down. It's got a magneto on it. It's got so you look at the handlebars, they're clip-on. And it's got an advance, a spark advance. It's got a choke. It's got a compression release, a clutch lever, and a brake lever on the other side, and a throttle. So you've got more controls than Wilbur Wright had, And it's like, but the thing about it is getting it to run right. You get going on it, you retard the spark, you start it. You get it going, and then you get it just right, and then you advance the spark rate. To me, that's a lot of fun because it's a highly involved type of thing, and it's just the pride of being able to ride it. And it's an old bike, and the thump of a single like there's nothing cooler. It's got the big fishtail exhaust on it, and it's an original bike, and that's fun. And it's got a Amel carburetor. It's a GP carburetor. There's no idle circuit on it. So it's like shooting gasoline at the intake. It's just there to. It's a racing carburetor. It takes. There's some art to it. That's fun. The other bike, guys, my newest one. I'm just nuts about. It's a Terry Vance built it for me, Vance and Hines. I was at a AFT race, and I was looking at their Super Twins bike, and I'm going, shit, that's good looking. I said, could you build one for me? And he goes, well, yeah, what are you going to do with it? I said, well, I want you to put a light on it and a tail light on it and a kickstand. And he goes, really? I said, yeah, come on. So that's what he did. He built, so it's a 750. And that thing is a hoot. It doesn't, and people say, is it street legal? And I go, sure. It's got a license plate and a light on it.
Ish. Ish. Yeah.
Put on, there's no mirrors. The handlebars are just straight across it. You put a front brake on it too. That's the other thing. And I got Keith McCarty over at Yamaha Racing to do the same thing with one of their 750s too. So I got to get Roland Sands or somebody to build one that's an Indian. But these are just basically full on race bikes that I get to ride on the street. So it's pretty cool, and they sound great. You can hear me coming, and I can be out in the country here in about 30 seconds from where I live, and it looks just like that bike there, except behind the license plates is a light, and they're cool. They're a lot of fun. They're light, they're 330, 40 pounds, and they 100 horsepower, and it's just, you can't go very far in them because the tanks are small, but the seats aren't any bigger, so it all kind of matches that way. You can ride it for about half an hour and you're done. But that's fun. I mean, for me, I'm not a big touring guy. I just like to ride them, go to lunch on them, go run an errand on them. And I live in a place that I can do that, so it's great.
That process you're talking about of getting it started, I love that.
Yeah.
I think I think that's why I've been inclined. I've always wanted it, and I don't know if I'll ever have the money to do it like a classic Indian. The idea, kickstart. Well,
yeah.
I'd like to keep my legs. I mean,
stand on the others, the ones that kick it, stand to kick down. Yeah.
But the process of that, of retarding the spark and things like that.
If you ever see Gordon McCall, ask him about the time he pushed me on the thing trying to bump start it. I think we just about killed him because my fat ass, you're 230, I'm about 270, right? And he pushed me on the thing, still talking about it. I think it's very tacky that he talks and brings it up. But that's okay.
What do you think about electric motorcycles?
Have you ever ridden one?
Yeah, I have a couple times actually.
I think if I was a cannonball, that's the way it would be like, because you can't hear anything. There's no frame of reference. Yep. It's just out by your head, right? And you're going along, and you're going, I feel like a cannonball. There's nothing around me. And then you look there, you're going 90 miles an hour, and you're going, well, hell, this thing's dangerous. It's just like, it's like you start off riding the thing, you're kind of going, okay, that's pretty cool. And you ride up next to somebody, and they're looking at you, and you're not making any noise. You're going, okay. But what you find out you end up doing is over time, it's not about how fast you can go or how you can accelerate. It's about how long you can make it last, right, with a charge. So your 3 generation, you're kind of you're kind of going slower and faster, and you're kind of gliding and trying to figure out how I can get just another 10 miles out of this thing. Because that's to me is kind of the fun part about it, is how you can operate it. But I think they've got a place. We had a big discussion this weekend with the guy that distributes Ingenia. Is that the name of the bike? It's part of Formula E or Moto E.
Oh yeah, I can't think off the top of my head. I can picture it. Anyway, I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
very capable motorcycle. They've been racing. Ducati's going to take their place at MotoGP, but you start talking about it, and I think those bikes. People say, well, can you convert internal combustion people over to an electric bike? I kind of think that's a fool's errand. Okay, but I think where the market's going to come for those bikes is a whole different place, and it starts with off-road bicycles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then you've seen the evolution of bicycles from being off-road bikes to being electrically assisted bikes to these Zugos now are just taking over. I don't know. In Laguna Beach, California, I mean, there's packs of these kids on these things, that running around on them. But I think that's the market eventually for these types of motorcycles. Are ones that are going to be found in the people that are taking the evolution of bicycles into electrified bicycles more than trying to convert the internal combustion guys back. And that's a big market, and you know what? It's God love it all. I mean, it's great. So.
Did Harley stop making that electric bike that they did Long Way Up on? Are they still making that?
It dropped by $10,000, and they had to halt production for 2 months because of supply chain issues. Yeah,
okay.
But it's still going. It's actually sold out.
Yeah, and they spun it off too. I think it's becoming more and more its own entity. But Harley. Okay. Yeah, so Harley bought Stasics. I don't know if you know Stasics. It's a little electrified bicycle as well for kids. So they're doing whatever they can. That company, we're racing baggers now. I don't know if you've heard about the bagger racing we've been doing. And
that's cool.
Yeah, very cool.
It's one of those things that's like a train wreck, right? It shouldn't happen. Yep. You can't.
You got to watch it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna stay till it's over, right? And
yeah.
I've got another way to say it, but it's very politically incorrect. But anyway, the point is, you take these baggers out there, and what they're doing, and it's created a whole new category for Harley and for Indian. They put a tremendous amount of money on it, but the new management at Harley in the last 2 years, the fellow that used to run Puma has now come over to run Harley, and he's really focused on how to get the demographic pushed down and what to do. It's amazing to see his impact. He brought Jim Farley, who's the chairman of Ford, on the board of Harley as well. I think that's having a big impact. And they're not only now a lifestyle brand, but they're coming back into the technology that they've kind of forgotten about for the last 30 years, and they're starting to try to catch up now. But I think the bagger racing has done a lot to improve their manufacturing and their design, and we're kind of proud of that.
I mean, some of those big Harleys, I've had a chance to ride a couple of them, some friends of mine. I mean, and there is nothing more comfortable than getting out there and you've got your stereo and it's everything, and there's something comfortable. But the true Harley guys are never going to go, you know what I need? I need to get rid of my panhead and get an electric bike. That's just never going to happen. But watching that baggy racing is by far, you're right, it's a train wreck and you're waiting for something to happen. And yeah.
It's fun. It's a good reminder that motorcycle racing is supposed to be fun. I love watching it. So,
but I don't really realize what they've done. What we found we had to do is not treat it as a sideshow. We treat it as a real class with real technology and real technical drive, right? So these guys were doing 170 miles an hour on the banks at Daytona this year.
Wow. I didn't know it was that fast. Like,
do they need new seats to sit around their testicles? I mean,
yeah, I never thought it was a joke because I've seen how fast they are, but I didn't think it was that fast.
Minibikes at Daytona. And that's a lot of stuff flapping in the breeze, boys. And I'll tell you what, Harley just came to Wichita about 2 weeks ago and put it in the wind tunnel here at the aeronautical area. And I mean, they're going full in on this thing. And you kind of laugh about it, but hell, it's a real class now. It's attracted a whole new group to our racing, and they're what the funny thing about it is they appreciate the sport bikes, and the sport bikes now, that group appreciates the Harleys, and it's really kind of drawing the crowd together a little bit. So now when you go to the races, you're gonna see a wider variety of people you've ever seen, and it's a good family deal, and it's a lot of fun. And they make noise. I mean, God, they're loud, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The Indian guys, they're really kind of steely-eyed on this thing too, and they paper design for that bike. It's an overhead cam, multiple valve bike, and that engine is a Yamaha, compared to the Harley, which is like a dinosaur. The Harleys get about 131 versus 108, so that's what a difference of how many different inches? It's about 20 inches displacement. The push rod versus overhead cam, and but the bikes balance, and they're both racing about one's oil cooled and air cooled, the other one's water cooled, so they're hitting about the same performance standard. The Harleys having a little harder time getting there, but they're doing it. So the brakes look.
I'm always amazed what they can push out of those push rod motors.
Yeah. But they had trouble. I mean, they had oiling issues, they had bottoming issues, they had all kinds of things. But they had to add finning to them. They've raised the foot pegs to get clearance. They've raised the ride heights on the bike, and they flat haul. In fact, at Atlanta, the top qualifying bagger would have qualified probably 12th or 13th on the grid for Superbike.
Dang. Okay, that's fast. That's really cool.
And capable.
I did not know that. That's fun.
I can watch that all day. I mean, watching any motorcycle race is great, but watching those guys throw around those bikes is just incredible. So, all right. Well, we need to wrap this up.
Yeah. Go
ahead. Sorry, Richard.
Motorcycle racing is the most exciting race in the world because the equation is as much the rider as it is the bike, right? And I'll leave it at that, and invite anybody that wants to see something to come out, and anybody that really wants to watch it on TV. We're on Fox 2, MAV TV. We have highlights during the week afterwards. We have our Pressure to Ride show. We're on YouTube. There's a lot of places you can watch us. We have a streaming service, MotoAmerica Live Plus. But I tell you what, we try to get it out as far as we can. We're evangelists for this thing, and it's been a lot of fun. And thank you guys for giving us a chance to talk about it tonight.
Absolutely, and for our Pacific Northwest Avance members, obviously, like we said, June 23rd or 24th, they're going to be up here at the Ridge. Right. Go out and see it. I think that's going to be amazing. So
for our California crew, go visit the Peterson if you haven't.
Absolutely,
amazing place to visit.
Yeah.
So
Richard, we really appreciate you taking.
You bet. We're Laguna Seca 2 weeks after as well, and come on out. The paddock's open. You can see all the riders and meet them. It's a great time.
Cool. Well, we really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. We know you're busy. It was a pleasure to meet you. We look forward to talking to you again in the future.
I hope so. Hope to see you at the races, actually.
Yeah.
Pleasure's mine, and hope to run
for this
absolutely. Before we sign off, where should people go? Do you have a website you can plug or anything that we want to direct people to for?
MotoAmerica.com has it all. It's all right there.
Okay. All right. We'll send it there. I'll make sure the link is on the page, everybody. So thank you very much, Richard.
For this episode of the Avance Podcast, I'm Nick.
I'm Dan, and don't just get there. Enjoy the drive. Sorry about the lag.
Yeah.